Yes, let's have the roll call first. Go ahead. Need a microphone. Okay, you got it.
I'm Giovanna Erkanaut. I'm the management analyst in the library.
Ryan Hess, I'm Digital Initiatives Manager at the library.
Diane Lai, Division Manager at the library.
I'm Allison Cormack. I'm the council member liaison.
Hi, I'm Sheena Ching, here.
I'm Brigham Wilson, commission member.
Bob Moss, commission member.
Amy Murphy, commission member.
Okay, the first item is the draft minutes approval from our February 28th meeting. Did anybody have any comments, corrections, additions? Nothing? Somebody want to move to approve them?
I move to approve the draft.
Second that.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Okay, the next item is library technology. Ryan, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. So Ryan Hess with the library, and tonight I want to kind of give you guys an update on some of the stuff that the e-library team has been doing over the last year, and where we're planning on going in the future. So just to kind of wrap up the 2017-2018 year, as you probably remember, we had a big project to move the library website to a new platform, which integrates the web content and the catalog and the events calendar all into one system. And what we've seen with that is some pretty big productivity gains. In the old system, there was a lot of time that the e-library staff had to spend using their technical skills to make changes to the website and do things with other staff without technical skills would have to come to us to get something changed on the website. There were a lot of limitations to what we could do. This system has opened up the whole website and all the various online communication tools to the regular staff because it's so non-technical. So that's helped a great deal with staff being able to take their expertise in whatever area of literacy or programming or whatever it is that they're really good at, and actually be able to bring that to the website on their own and just sort of develop book lists or profile resources or services or programs that they're involved in. So that's been really nice. And then, of course, the user experience is vastly improved. So we have now a site that throughout the entire system works very well on a mobile device, on a tablet, on a desktop computer. And because of all the integrations, we can get a better view of how users are interacting with the site and be able to make changes based on what we're seeing. So that's also been very nice. We also were involved in a lot of technology projects. So because we have kind of a technical bent to us, we're always asked to do kind of front-end technology for the public. And that during that year, we were doing projects around 3D printing. And we had a 3D design coaching service that was staffed by volunteers. And they were really great. And that was a very popular program, as was the 3D printing. And then also we got a robot, and that was our Dewey robot, which I don't remember if I ever, were we able to bring it in? Never? Okay, maybe next time. So Dewey's doing well. Dewey's doing really great, getting national attention for Palo Alto, so that's great. We're doing some exciting stuff with Dewey, and the public loves Dewey. And so we'll get into that a little bit, but that's been very successful. And I think this has kind of demonstrated that there is, when we have the bandwidth to do these kinds of projects, that they really can pay dividends. So I'll get into that in a second. But the main takeaway is that new value-added services are now possible because we have saved so much staff resources with the website management. And so now we're able to do a lot of really cool stuff. We do something called the edge assessment analysis, and this is an instrument for gauging what technology services we have, what are the gaps that we could fill, and this sort of compares us with other libraries so we can kind of see where we fall. And so we were able to identify a few gaps that we should fill, and I can report back to you that we've filled quite a few of them. We're having ongoing e-resource sessions with the public so they can come in and learn how to use some of our online resources. We have a new creative software laptop that has Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator and Premiere and some 3D design software on it. And that's now available at the downtown library. And so this is available for the public to use for 3-hour sessions. Also privacy is like another major initiative of ours. So we're trying to create as much transparency about how our apps work. A lot of these apps, they're third-party systems. They do collect some data. So we're trying to allow the public to kind of easily look at all of the apps at once and sort of see which one meets their threshold for how they feel about privacy and what they're willing to share. And then also helping people understand if you're very concerned about your privacy, which many people are these days, how can you best use the tools that we have in the most private manner? So we've created a lot of resources around that. We've got some plans for more, maybe some programming around that in the future. And then we did a tech survey as well to sort of gauge like what future services or technologies would the public like to see in the library. So we ran that, and that gave us some interesting information about what they would like to see, and so we're hoping to apply that in the future. Luckily, some of the stuff that was identified are some of these items that I have here, and so we've been sort of checking those off already, so that's good news. So the tech survey, just to get in some of the details, digital creation, hardware and software was important. So people identified things like Adobe Photoshop, having camera equipment and things like this available for checkout. Adult customers, they were still very interested in learning how these online resources work and how they can do their research or whatever with that. And then also we identified a few areas which we're calling change literacy that we think we can invest our time in the future. And so change literacy is kind of it's a framework that, change literacy is a framework that we're developing that sort of sees the changes that are going on in society with, coding as a form of literacy, or understanding how technology works as a kind of literacy, all the sort of things that a person in the 21st century needs to know to be able to understand how the world works and how our democracy works and all that. And so some of this is related to technology. So the public did identify that they want to see some of this sort of emerging technology in the library space. So things like VR, 3D printing, robotics. They want to be able to come into the library and learn about this stuff. They would like technology discussions and lectures on these emerging technologies and how they impact society and what it means to them. Also learning how to use these things, building skills around these technologies. So learning how to code, how to use creative software, things of this nature. So this is what we're kind of calling change literacy, and so what we're trying to do is use this framework as a focus for future projects. So what we've discovered is that there's a new model that we can apply, and we've actually tried this out, and it seems to be working quite well. So the way it works is we go out, we identify a new technology. Sometimes this is quite expensive, like the robot, and so we get a grant to go get the technology, and then we experiment with it in different settings in the library, see what's popular, what people like, and try to be creative about how to apply it. And then create new services and programs around the things that actually worked. Okay, so we did this with the robot as a case study. I can talk about that. So we got a grant to get the robot in 2018. We ran a bunch of experiments trying the robot out in story times, bringing the robot out at events, at library events. We had a community conversation about robotics and robots in libraries. And from all that, we developed some programs that are actually happening now. So we've got the Robo Dojo. This is a coding program, so you can come and learn how to code the robot. We have the Sunday Robot Show, and so this is on Sundays. You can come down to Mitchell Park, and the robot will make an appearance. Children love it. They get to tickle the robot. So the robot has secret ticklish spots, so they get to find out where those are.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Does the robot has a name?
Dewey.
Dewey.
Yeah, Dewey is our robot.
Is it a female or a male?
I think it hasn't identified that yet. And then, so then we're also getting inquiries at the desk. So people are actually coming to the library and asking, is the robot coming out today? So it's actually working out very well as a major engagement tool. So that's been very fun. We also, some of the people who've been coming to the Robo Dojo consistently are asking, like, hey, can we have a club around the robot, like, where we can all get together and meet and maybe start, having a club around the robot. So that's something that we've heard about, we're considering. And then, like I mentioned, Palo Alto now is a leader in robotics in libraries. So we're being asked to write articles and go to conferences, and other libraries are contacting us to learn how we did it and to help develop code libraries, repositories, sharing knowledge and things like this. So we've actually got another partner in Roanoke County Library in Virginia who's also got a robot, and they're working very closely with us on some of their programs.
Since the robot is so popular, do you think we should be getting more of them, or is one enough?
Well, we're looking at that. So they're quite expensive, unfortunately.
I was afraid.
But we are actually in the process of applying for a new grant to get another kind of robot that's a little bit different, that we might be able to apply in a different way. So I think that generally speaking, yes, we will always be looking at the next thing that comes out. The robot is a couple years old now. We are starting to play with the idea of building a wheelchair for the robot because his limbs are getting a little tired. But these things happen, and so we will probably have to invest in more robots down the way. And we do have this grant that's in the works.
I would assume there are some companies in the Bay Area that are in the robot business.
Yes.
That you could talk to and say, hey, if you give us a robot or give us a real big discount, we'll publicize
Yeah.
the wonderful things robots do, and it'll help your economy.
Yeah.
Talk to us. If you can try it, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, we've actually been doing that. In fact, this one robot company that we've been talking with, they're not in the Bay Area, but we have been kind of throwing this idea out, like, hey, we have this sort of street cred in the library community, so if you want some attention to your product, maybe you can let us try it out in our space and we'll see what happens. So that's kind of where we're going with a lot of different things, actually, not just robots, but game platforms, VR, and a couple other technologies. So I'll just move along very quickly. So some of our future plans, but this kind of gets into what we were just discussing. This summer, we've got a VR Hackfest and an exhibit that's coming. So we're going to do a 3-hour program where people can come in and they can learn A-frame code, which is a web-based code for building 3D objects in virtual space. So they'll be able to create a 3D environment, and then we're going to create a collection of all the environments that people have created, and then we're going to have an exhibit where people can come and they can learn how this works. They can see the code. people who come to the workshop will be able to share their objects with their friends using something called the distributed web, which is another emerging technology. One of the technologies in that is being developed here in Palo Alto. It's called the interplanetary file system. And it's like a new way for the intranet to work. And so as part of our changed literacy programming, we're trying to bring attention to some of these technologies because they do have implications for the internet and for how people live, and some issues might be raised by that. So we want people to start to understand these things as they are coming online. We also are looking at AI programming at the moment. As you probably have heard, AI is coming together quite quickly and a lot quicker than maybe people realize. And so we are feeling some pressure to kind of get into that game as soon as possible to start addressing some of those big issues that are coming down the road. So that's something that we're looking at. We do have some Amazon Echo shows right now, which have an AI component to them. So we're thinking about something maybe for the fall that we might do with that. And then meanwhile, we're developing some partnerships. So I mentioned the Roanoke County Library partnership. We're also in discussions with the Microsoft store here in Palo Alto. They have a lot of VR equipment, so there might be a way for us to have events where that equipment is used. We've been in talks with the Palo Alto School District about various technologies. And then also Protocol Labs is the company behind the interplanetary file system. So we're hoping to actually engage them once we get a little further along with that stuff. So lots of exciting things that we're working on. And of course, things are always changing. So probably next year there'll be all kinds of new things we can talk about. So that's it.
You have a lot of, it sounds like you have a lot of programs that where you're actually, for example, you mentioned you do some training on various things. Do you have a formal class where you advertise we're going to be training on writing code or doing this or doing that? Because one of the things that we've noticed in general with libraries is that people don't seem to recognize that there are things available, classes and programs they can go to, and so the attendance has been going down a little bit. So if you're going to do a class in coding, should we be publicizing it, or are you having enough people come in anyway so you don't have time for more classes?
Yeah, so with the Robo Dojo, for example, it's usually full. 3D printing services are usually booked. The 3D design coaching is always booked. So we're feeling like we should actually be doing more rather than just the marketing. The marketing seems to be working okay for us. But I will say that with some of our services, there's probably more marketing that needs to be done, and we need to be a little bit more creative about it. So one example is this new laptop that came out. We saw that the public definitely wants those services, but then we're not seeing the actual pickup of the laptop. We're not seeing the checkouts like we would expect. So something's going on there. So we're addressing that. We're trying to figure out what the right formula is for getting that communication out. But generally speaking, all the technology programs seem to be full as soon as we put them out on our calendar.
I'm glad that you mentioned about the program that are very popular. And I know that many students, they are not able to register for those popular programs. So I'm not sure what kind of policy that we would have for those registers, for those students. So if they have a time to do with the 3D printing or some other popular program, maybe next time, probably this person or this student has to wait like maybe a month, or I don't know, because that's just an idea. Because I have some people complain that it's a good program. They like to be involved with the program, but they cannot register because every time it's full.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure about the policy for the registration. So it would have more people being involved.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about the 3D printing in particular, right? Yeah. So that's been an ongoing problem. We have 2 printers, and they're available only for certain hours because the staffing involved is significant. So that has been an issue. I think that, if we could do anything, for the future, it would be to have more staff and maybe some dedicated space for these kinds of technologies. That's something that I think would help with that a lot.
As far as for the students or the people registered, do we have a policy for that? Like, if you register this time and you use the 3D printing, that's wonderful. But why don't we save the chance for the next person who's never been used this 3D printing? So I'm
Right.
talking about this policy. So,
Yeah.
so that more people can use this facility and enjoy and have this enjoyable experience
Right.
with 3D printing.
Yeah, the policy did come up actually at a recent technology committee meeting, and it's something that we're definitely looking at because there's a lot of different models out there. We adopted one that Sunnyvale uses, and I think that maybe there are a couple of rule changes that we could make. Certainly, we do have people who take up the spaces and then they don't show up sometimes. So we've been considering, like, perhaps if someone is doing that repeatedly, then they're not going to be allowed to register for future ones. There's another model that we have considered that the Chicago Public Library uses, where the printers are just sort of available for people to come and use sort of at will. And but to do that, you have to kind of go through a class, and so there's a few different ways to do it, and we are kind of talking about different ways to do it because we have recognized that as a problem. Yeah.
Thing is about the creative software. I think it's wonderful that we respond to the feedback of our patrons. I think that's wonderful. But the thing is that if we provide the creative softwares, do we also provide the lessons, classes? Do we? So and you mentioned about the 3 hours at the downtown library. So it is 3 hours is the class 3 hours, or it's just the hours that the patrons can use?
They get a 3-hour slot where they can use the computer. Now, we do have a lot of resources for sort of self-paced training. One of the problems that we run into with all of these technologies is we're lucky if we actually have staff who can use these things. We're really lucky with the robot because one of my teammates in the library knows how to code in Python, so she can do this. And without her, maybe the program goes away. So it's like, so we're lucky in that regard. And then, maybe we have staff that know how to use Photoshop or Premiere to a certain level, but then that staff person is also involved in all these other things. So we definitely have limits to how much staff time we can devote to these things. We have looked at adding a service like lynda.com, like some libraries in the area have right now. So that's something we don't have at the moment. I think it's something we would like to have, but it's very expensive because you basically pay for how many people are in your community. So that's something. But we do have, Safari Tech books, and we have some other physical books that people can use. And of course, there's YouTube videos. If you want to learn how to use Photoshop, YouTube is kind of your best friend. So, and on the computer itself, there are sort of bookmark icons on the desktop. You can just double click and it'll take you straight to those resources. So that's kind of our solution at the moment. It's not perfect, but that's kind of what we've come up with at the moment.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just a general comment. When we go to Mitchell Park, I notice that the computers are not that heavily used. Maybe a quarter of them have active people sitting down. Now, of course, that's, sometimes it's on a weekday, sometimes on a weekend, but usually it's in the middle of the day. So I don't know whether our timing is wrong or the computers just aren't getting used all that much. What's your experience been? Do people really use the computers, or is it just a fraction of them, a quarter or half of the time that are being used?
So, I'm also speaking kind of just from what I've seen, because the computer area is not really something that I'm involved in so much. But I will say that, yeah, there are certain times of the day when all the computers will be in use, and that tends to be after the schools get out. The kids rush. I mean, I've seen them. They run to get their computer because they fill up quick, and then they're on there playing their games or whatever they do. And then there's, no computers available. But then, yeah, at other times of the day, maybe only one bank of those computers will be busy, and the other in the computer lab room, it might not be so much. But I will add that the technology committee and many other parts of our library have been sharing ideas about computers, and we're coming up on a period where we're going to be renewing our leases with the computers, and so we have some choices to make. And so we're considering a lot of different ideas, some of those being how many desktops do we really need? Should we have more laptops? Are tablets something that people are interested in? I know that we're thinking about running a survey just to kind of fine tune that, because we did ask in the tech survey a little bit about this, but so we're looking at some different models there as well. Yeah.
So we have the data. If this committee is interested in seeing the usage data, we have what hour and what usage by what age group.
And in general, you find the usage is pretty good.
Yes, actually, because of this PC replacement project, I was actually looking at the usage data yesterday. So Mitchell Park has a very consistently has very good usage. So Mitchell Park is always busy. Downtown, so is downtown. Rinconada, peaks and valleys. So.
Any other questions or comments? Well, thanks very much. It sounds
Okay.
like we're making good use of our facilities and our staff, and I would say generally satisfying the needs we've been finding in the community for technology use and education in the area. So it's very good. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
Okay, the next item is the library budget.
Hi, yes, I was gonna say, sorry about that. I realized I didn't leave you in app places.
I have the big budget at home.
I know.
I realized perhaps
make
I
a
should have brought that, but it said there'd be an app places. I'm like, okay, that'll save me carrying it.
We will be going over a few pages, not the entire book, as Allison will be later. So hi again, I'm Giovanna. I'm the new management analyst in the library. So this is my first budget, so yay. So the city manager's proposed budget was made public Monday night at the city council meeting. It was presented to the city council, and they had a short study session on it, so budget season is upon us. We wanted to bring to your attention the library's budget, obviously, so that's at places for you to take a look at. And then specifically, I wanted to go over the proposals, which are on the last page. So those are the changes in the budget. We were asked by the budget office, was asked by the council to make some cuts this year. So most of those proposals for this year include some sort of reduction. There are 5 total that are listed. So I'll just go over them one by one, and then you can ask questions now, or we can ask questions at the next meeting. Again, these are proposals, so these have not been approved yet. This is the proposed budget. So the first one on there you'll see is Rinconada staffing alignments. That is to eliminate 1 full-time librarian position that will be located at Rinconada. That position is already vacant, so all that means is for next year we won't be rehiring that position. So it will not be budgeted for. But we are not letting anyone go. The position's already vacant. The It will affect our ability to expand our outreach capabilities. That is evident in this year's program attendance for teens, actually, which is one of our performance indicators that you'll see in that budget. You'll notice there's been a drop in teen attendance at teen programming. There was a 30% drop this year, and we had a vacant teen librarian position for about 3-4 months this year. So we can attribute that drop in program attendance to the lack of having a librarian. So we can expect these sorts of drop in programming abilities when we don't rehire a librarian position. So just something to note.
So when you say drop, it means in Recanata Library only, right?
No, this was for this
General.
librarian. We're dropping one librarian position that happens to be at the Rinconada Library. The drop I'm talking about is teen program, so that's
Okay, so
across all 5 libraries. We have one teen librarian position that they span all the libraries in the teen programming, which is mostly centered at Mitchell Park. The second proposal you'll see on there is a consolidation of contract services and materials. This adjustment includes a few realignments. It's an umbrella proposal. It includes consolidating some of our internal data analytics platforms. We have a few. We're going to consolidate and use less that we think will do the same thing. We will streamline some historical digitization processes, and we'll discontinue the purchase of new music CDs. Probably the thing out of all of those that will be most apparent to the public is the discontinuation of purchasing new music CDs. That decision was made based on the increase of online streaming of materials in comparison with the physical circulation of CDs. The use of music CDs, physical music CDs, have stagnated since 2015, while patrons increasingly opt to stream music. So CDs that are already in circulation will remain in circulation. We will just put a hold on buying new CDs. The third proposal on here is a reduction in children's library hours. So this is to reduce spending for the department. We've proposed to cut Sunday hours. When the decision was originally made to keep children's library open on Sundays, the use data at the time did not fully take into consideration the increased usage at Mitchell Park. Mitchell Park and Rinconada will remain open on Sunday. We've seen increased usage on the weekends at Mitchell Park, especially Sundays. So that's how that decision was made. The reduction will lead to a reduction of 0.30 FTE, which you'll notice in the staffing reductions, there's this 0.3, that's from the Sunday reduction of the Sunday hours. So that's about 624 staff hours that will be cut because of that. The fourth,
Pardon me, you mean that it just cuts hours, it doesn't cut actual physical staff?
it cuts hours from physical staff.
Yeah,
But
okay.
not full
Not the
staff.
people.
Not the people, just the hours that
Just
they
the
would work.
hours? Yeah, okay, just wanted to verify that.
Sure.
Are you taking questions as we go, or do you want to get through them all?
What's normal, Diane? What's normal, Diane? Should I wait till the end to take questions, or? I'll just answer as we go.
Yeah,
There we go.
So,
So
but
ask away.
yeah, but it's not. It's closing children's library on Sundays.
It's closing children's
Yes, just
library
to
on
be
Sunday.
clear,
Yes. Closing the hours that are, on Sunday, children's is only open for 4 hours. It's shortened hours. Yeah, 4, exactly 4. And so it's the day with the least number of open hours, in theory, the least effect on public due to the number of hours, and Mitchell Park is also open that day.
Do we have a data? So for the 4 hours on Sundays,
yeah.
so what's the usage?
The usage is
Pretty low?
actually the hourly usage is pretty on par with the rest of the week. So the hourly usage is about the same, but there's less total usage. Sorry, I don't have the number right in front of me, but I was looking at that, so I can bring it to the next meeting if you'd like. But the hourly usage is the same, but it's open less hours. So the total number of patrons that come that day is the least amount of patrons for the days of the week, if that makes sense.
I just think that we have to keep an eye on their feedback, because
Yes.
all of a sudden, no service on Sundays for children's library. Children's library for children, Sunday, no service. I think we have to, pay more attention on that.
Yes. The fourth proposal on here is a grant, actually, so more money. So this is a grant from the Pacific Library Partnership. We got one last year as well. This year we're using the money for Link Plus. This Link Plus usage has gone up over the past few years since we've been using it. So this will help us offset that cost a bit. And then the fifth and final proposal on this list is library supervising staff alignments. This one's a little bit complicated, so bear with me. So we lost through retirement the youth services manager this year, and we had a vacant senior librarian position. So we took the opportunity to reassess supervisory staff distribution across public programs. So in place of those two positions, so in place of the manager and the senior librarian, we're adding not rehiring those, adding 2 supervising librarians instead. The youth services manager, the youth services and youth programs part of that job has gotten transferred over to Ruth Ann Garcia, who is a manager in charge of adult programs. So now she's overseeing adult and children's programs. We feel that will consolidate program management better. And then we're adding 2 supervisory librarians, one at children's to oversee children's operations, and one more in addition at Mitchell Park. They already have one, now they'll have 2. Supervising librarians supervise circulation staff. So this helps relieve managers of some of the duties of supervising direct service circulation staff and be able to focus more on programs. And then staff will have more, hopefully better access to a supervisor at their actual library. Day-to-day operations for the children's library would be the responsibility of the supervising librarian there. And then Mitchell Park, they'll have 2 supervising librarians. It is the most trafficked library out of the 5 libraries. Just over half of all trafficked libraries goes to Mitchell Park, so they could use the extra supervisory help.
So the increase in expenditures is based on the level of the people in those roles? That's the difference?
Are you talking about that 2,000?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
it is. So it's a swap 2 for 2, but due to increased staff costs in general and the levels of the positions.
Do you know, or ask some questions on some earlier, on the earlier pages, it looks like we're staying with like a little bit under 50 people, but our public services from like 2018 to 2020 is going up by like 1 million. And some of that is like workers' comp or pension, but just wonder, like, 1 million's a lot in 2 years, so you're adding like 20,000 per person over those 2 years. Just wondering if you could maybe explain, like, what is like pushing, some of the decisions that are pushing that large increase?
Sorry, can you point out which part
Sure,
of that
if you
was?
look on like page 268, you have public services, so the FY 2018 actuals is like 5.3 million. And then by our 2020 proposed budget, you're at like
Yes.
6.3 million.
So the majority of I'll give you an answer and a no answer. So the majority of our budget is staffing, because so much of what the library does is staffing. The staffing budget is not handled by me in the library in general. That is handled by finance in the budget department. So I can't speak to exactly what that is. I don't know if Allison might be able to speak better. I have ideas because I know what, but I don't know exactly why for this year.
Are you looking at the delta between FY19 and FY 2018? You're looking at like the pension numbers going up, which,
Well, so I mean, yes, the pension number is going up by like 300,000. And so I think that is like a big jump in the pension one. You have the workers' compensation that's also going from 3,000
Yeah.
in 2018 to 150,000.
so you're looking at the second to last column. Is that the one that you're interested in?
The change, but specifically, I think he's thinking from
So it's even
public services specifically.
public services. it's like
2018 to
from
2020.
I'm looking at it from like 2018 to 2020, and seeing that on that like third row, it's 5.3 million to 6.3 million. So that's like the overall public services dollars by division. And so then when trying to understand why it goes up by 1 million, the pension does go up by 400,000, workers' comp goes up by 130,000. I don't see other ones that are, and so it's like what's happening in
Yeah.
our pension or workers' comp,
So-
but even then, like, where's the other 400,000?
do you want to answer the numerical part? You want to just jump in on the pension part? and
Yeah, I
take
think
that
it's
part?
majority pension, so go
Yeah,
ahead.
a little bit wonky here, but let me just see if I can explain it succinctly. This is happening all over the city. Last year was the first year, and it was done sort of at a top level. The vast majority of our workforce is unionized, and most of them in SEIU have their pensions with CalPERS. If you've been following along in the, you'll know that CalPERS uses a certain assumption about how much money they will make, right? So we send them money each year, including the employees send money. It's all agreed to in the labor contracts. And then CalPERS says, okay, we're going to owe this much in pensions, and we think we're going to make, say, 7.5% in perpetuity. And yet they won't. Right? So the rate of a return or the discount rate, we don't need to get into too much of the details, is overinflated and has been for some time. We, the city, have taken a pretty big, bold step, and it's under the leadership now of Mayor Eric Filseth, to say that we are going to account for this now, right? So that when our employees currently are retired, we will have enough money to pay them because CalPERS won't. And we will still be responsible for that. So we're using a methodology that's a Section 115 IRS trust that's set up, and at the end of this year, at the end of FY20, we will actually have $22 million in there. And so we're starting with the general fund, and eventually it'll roll through the enterprise funds. It is a significant jump, and it's all tied to the fact that we are proactively saving money so that we will be able to pay our current employees' pensions in the future. It's a big number, and this is the first year. If you read the transmittal letter, which I don't think is here with us, but it's on the website. If you read the city manager's transmittal letter, it does talk about that. And this is not the only department in which there will be some cuts. We're very fortunate. Our revenues look good in all the different areas so far, but we will need to make some cuts in certain places to be able to ensure that we're saving enough money for the pension. So that's the medium-sized answer, but this is not specific to the library. It's happening across the entire city, and I think it's actually something that's good discipline. We are ahead of other cities in terms of doing this.
One of the things I thought was odd, and I'll pass this around, was that during the discussion Monday about the budget, the only department which was listed as losing people was the library. And you're saying there's others that are going to be losing it. And that wasn't mentioned particularly. So I thought that was kind of...
There are cuts in other places. Again, I apologize, I don't have my full budget book with me. I didn't think we'd be going into quite this level of detail. In some of them, there are other reductions, including like what's here about freezing vacancies. And I'm sorry, again, Bob, I'd have to go back and look at the transmittal letter. I think they just wanted to pick a few highlights. No, it's the transmittal letter that has more detail. Yeah.
Well, yeah, this is what was in the packet, and
Right.
And under proposed budget recommended changes, the first one is adjust the fire department deployment model, further staffing of apparatus. So that didn't imply any change in staffing level. The second one is eliminate a library impacting special program capacity. And if you look at I thought it was interesting, the only department that had a lot of detail about what they provide was the library department.
Well, that's because when the finance committee, so the finance committee is doing, the budget group, administrative services department is creating a services inventory. I have to pause, I have to get that right. And the library actually, I think, was just one of the first to go through the process. So they brought us a demonstration of that, I think maybe 2 times ago. And so that's what they have available. All of the departments will be bringing that forward to us at the budget department hearings in May. So everyone will be doing it. It's just that the library was early, and so they use that as an example so for people to start to understand what will this look like. Because here's what happens. This is what we get, right? We get this.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. What collection of technical services, should that go up or, so this will be a methodology for us consistently, all of us in the community, to look at what exactly is happening underneath each of these programs. So
Okay,
it's
well-
just an example, yeah.
Okay,
And I mean, I can speak to the librarian position. So we had proof from this year. So we had this teen librarian vacancy this year,
Yeah.
and we went down 30% in program attendance. And so the budget office liked that example because it's an example that we can show this is how this affects programming and affects the services we provide. And so I think that's why they picked on us. But I saw, I was there too. So I think that's why we were picked on for the presentation. This was a presentation from the budget office to city council. And so they were trying to show some examples of things because they only had 30 minutes to go through it, and it's a big book. So I wouldn't worry, as Allison said, all the departments are cutting something, positions. And the fact that we were highlighted in the services inventory part is actually a good thing because we finished it on time and they liked what we did. And so we're an example for the rest of the departments. So I think it's something to be proud of rather than to be scared of, I think.
Okay, well, it's encouraging that the library was not just picked out, it just happened to fall in line in the wrong time.
Let's say featured.
Featured is a good word. Do you have any other questions at this time?
I just had a question about the final number, and remind me again how we determined to get to, I think it's like 187?
Final number?
Yeah.
It was actually originally 300,000, but due to the revenue forecasts being pretty good, we had 2 vacant librarian positions, so we offered them both up for freezing, and we got one back due to
Okay.
revenue projection. So that's why it's kind of a random number. It was originally exactly just about 300,000,
And that was?
based on
like-
3% of
got
our
it,
budget.
okay, thank you.
I thought if we've had library vacancies, then presumably the expenses for this fiscal year will be less than projected, correct?
That is calculated in the grand scheme of things with the budget office and finance, so.
Okay, so there have been occasions in the past with other departments where they underspent for whatever reason. They couldn't hire a contractor, or they lost staff, or whatever, that the surplus was carried over the next year. Any thought about if there was a surplus from this year, carrying it over for next year for the libraries?
We don't do that. Yeah, so.
No, usually if there's a surplus in the general fund, there's some amount of that that goes to the infrastructure fund each year, and a variety of other things. The reconciliation is actually quite complicated. Every year there's some non-recurring, recurring.
So as part of the general fund, it's a great big balancing act. And so we kind of, some of us overspend, some of us underspend in different departments as far as services and responding to the public. And so it's, at the end of the day, it's not a surplus as far as the general fund goes, unfortunately. I don't know, fortunately, we can balance out things.
Oh, okay, let me give one example from last year. We had a real problem with fires. And so the fire department was working all kinds of overtime, and the cost went way, way up. And everyone just says, well, okay, public safety is important, we'll just take some money out of the reserve, which is what my recollection is. And that has been done occasionally over the years, where we've had a unexpected issue, and you've had to do something, so you just took the money out. That's what the reserves are for. So the money was taken out of the reserves, and the funding was provided to provide the necessary services that year. It happens.
Thank you all for listening to my budget speech for the first time.
Thank you so much. You did great.
No other comments on the budget? Oh, do you have a comment?
I'm really excited for the next part because Diane and Bob are both starting at 7:50, so it's gonna be a simultaneous presentation. Go.
Okay.
You're totally fine.
Okay. Library databases.
thank you. So this presentation is more in response to the questions the commissioners had last time. So I'm approaching from the perspective how students, or if and how they use our resources, particularly in relation to digital resources. Do you want me to handle that? It's just this one? Okay. So this is a brief overview of introduction, what we have in terms of resources. So when it comes to online resources, we have databases. These are in general in nature. They cover variety types of subjects. Then we have also some specialized, like a one theme, like morning for the Morning Star, for the stocks, that type of, or medical information. So those are for general special interests. And then we have downloadables, ebooks, downloadables, and then online readables, meaning you just open up your computer and read. Some of them are download, and then I'm not sure how familiar or if you used any of these. Some of them are more user-friendly than the other, but overall our usage has gone up with all of these ebooks. Then we have e-magazines. Zenio and Flipster are in English, and then Kono is for Japanese, Chinese, and some Korean speakers. And then we have streaming, which is really picking up the usage, streaming. And then Hoopla, RB Digital, Canopy, Ideas Roadshow. And actually, we are in this area where the only library that has all four. Because RB Digital alone has quite a few products. And it has concert recordings, it has books, audiobooks, great courses, and then it has Acorn TV shows. So it's very comprehensive, and then so is Hoopla. And then Canopy. So in general, this is the only library in this area that has all four for streaming. And then there's the music streaming, and then that's Frigo has been with us for a number of years. And Hoopla, Frigo, their service model is we pay once and we can use however number of times. But Hoopla is we don't pay until a user uses one of their items. And that means it's hard to budget. And that when it's popular, and then we pay somewhere around 10,000 a month, and next month is 12,000, but then the next month is 8,000. So it varies. We call that customer-driven acquisitions. And then here comes the homework assistance, Brainfuse. This is the only product that offers live homework online help. You can chat with someone online, and then they also have the homework help is K through 12, and then but they also have test preps from high school students to adults. And then we have these community resources that Discover and Go allows people to have passes for local museums and parks. And then Foundation Directory is where you can go to seek for grants, who offers what and under what conditions. And then we have streaming music, that's the same. And so, against that background, with all the available resources, how we're doing with our student asset cards project. So far, we have 10,724 students that have their cards registered as the asset card in our database. And then their activities basically is to three. They check out physical materials, or they register and use online resources, or they use other devices in the computer in the library, including computers, because we do have other devices for checkout. But you can interrupt me at any minute, because I saw from last meeting, there are some questions. And then so this is a chart that shows the total cards and then activities. So we see, instead of putting specific numbers here, which I do have those numbers, and then you see a upward trend since we started the program back in September last year. And we started providing data in December last year.
What are
Diane,
the,
what are, sorry, CKOs?
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to guess.
Thank you for the chance for me to clarify. That's on checkouts. Yeah. So,
And the red bar is cumulative?
yes, it's
So-
a cumulative.
Okay.
Yes.
Wait. So they're at it,
So total,
I think it's cumulative, so,
so in January, it's just the difference between,
yeah,
is that what you're saying?
yeah.
right. So you have a lower number, and then you see the growth.
Okay.
Yeah. So by April, like now, a few days ago, you see the usage has gone up over 10K.
So,
Total checkouts.
oh, okay, so, just so I understand, as of Monday, April 22nd, there have been, almost 13,000 checkouts based on the number of cards that are in blue.
That's correct.
But it's not that there were 13,000 checkouts in April.
That's right.
Okay.
Not,
All right, cumulative.
right. Okay, so let's see the next one. So this is a total checkout, but I want to break down the data a little bit, because this committee is interested in the physical checkout items and then the impact on physical checkouts versus some other use. So the difference here, the blue shows the total number of physical checkout, meaning the students that have the cards that have checked out physical items. Again, this is accumulative, so approaching 1,600, that's the number of physical items they checked out. We would really like to know, but then the other usage is other activities. That includes, they may have checked out a laptop to use. They may have signed up to use the computer in Mitchell Park, the tech lab. Or they may have checked out a bungee ball we have, or online resources, databases. We are still exploring to separate those so we can provide better details exactly to break those numbers down into category by say database usage or ebook downloads, but we have not been able to so far. So we can separate the physical items checkout and then all the other activities. And also it could be their cards are imported into our database, and then they are asked by their teachers or their parents to go to our website to sign up, to create their account online with us, but then they may have never used any of the resources in the library, and that's possible too. And that's also lumped in that total of other activities. So, and then here is to answer the question about who are these cards for the K through 12th grade students. So you can see most of the students are first graders, a lot of first graders, K through the 5th.
Elementary.
Right, K through 5th. And then you can see a gradual drop. And then also that green total with no checkouts, meaning with no checkout of physical items. They may still use the card for some activities, but there's no checkout of physical items.
So go ahead, Jean.
Excuse me. So may I know the total number? Is it a number that, the whole numbers that we have for the students from K to 12, or the number only targets on the promotion or the collaboration with PAUSD, because we encourage students to sign up to register to get their library cards. So which one? The total number, the total number of our patrons from K to 12, or the number for the activities that the collaboration between us and the PAUSD?
Here the data is the total number of that 10,720, the number I showed earlier. That number.
Okay.
All these are, the rest of the data is captured from that total.
Okay.
So the collaboration.
Collaborations.
Right.
They've been marked in the system with a different, indicator, so we're able to track those people separately than people who are just in that age group.
Okay.
Right, and that's what this analysis is based on. Yeah.
When you say total number of cards, I assume you're talking about the number of new applications, not the number that are still usable. Is that correct?
The total number of cards, meaning, again, it's all the cards that we exported or imported into our database. Again, it's that 10,000, that number.
Okay, because
Right.
looking at it, if you just say this is the number of cards that exist, then it'd be dropping off, which I don't believe. I think it's just getting more.
Okay, so that total is growing.
Yeah,
That at the beginning, I showed that 10,700, that number is growing by, on a weekly basis. Because we always have new students who sign up, and then with their parents' permission, and then the school district on a weekly basis send that data to us, and we load the students to create cards for them, and like this week, Monday, we loaded 100. So it's growing, the program is expanding. Parents have changed their mind, or they understand more now, and because of all kinds of reasons. So the program is expanding. Here is to answer the question about specifically the impact on materials usage. I have not seen again, I cannot claim there's a significant increase on our physical items usage because our physical item checkout rate has been steady, and which has been steady before the project over many years, has always just been 14 million, 15 million, and then 10,000 here, drop, 10,000 increase there. So I cannot claim that. However, this number I'd like to show you is really we see a noticeable increase on our database usage. And so these are the databases that are we can really safely assume is as a result of this project, because all of these these databases are schoolwork, can be used to support research and schoolwork and homework. So academic OneFile is a very general database that has A to Z. It's a knowledge database. Everything is there, very comprehensive. And biography in context that supports homework when kids want to write a biography. And kids info bits, literature resource center, all of these databases, they can be used to support homework and research. So as you can see, there's a very big difference between last year and this year. And then this year, the data you see there is only, some of them are 9 months, some of them are only 7 months. So you can add a third or double the number. So we are happy with those numbers, the increase. So the next step is we want to, our librarians will go to schools to promote our databases and promote our materials, our services, and then we will see if we can get more students be interested in signing up, or with the ones with the cards will be more active users. Questions?
It looks like you're getting a lot of, let's call it attention, as the students realize that the resources are there, they're getting in and using them. Are you noticing growth month to month, or is this kind of stabilized at some point? Because the chart doesn't show differences over time, it just shows the sum.
We think it's even though the data is like I jumped from 1 month, then 3 months later, and that's how I gathered the data. But the staff that's in charge of gathering the information has been keeping weekly data. So, and then from the data, we do see it's a steady increase.
Do you feel you need more resources, or do you think that what you've got now is going to be able to satisfy the increases we've been seeing? At some point, I assume the increase is going to level off, but who knows when and how high it's going to be.
Resources, you mean to buy more data? We have been keeping a very close eye on the demand, and we have an online resources committee, the librarians. They have been, we have been meeting and having conversations based on their interaction with students and with their daily service interaction with the customers. So right now, we think what we have is adequate, but again, we want to be, we want to really engage the customers, the users, and then learn as we go along. And if if needs are identified, then we can look into purchasing more, but as we just reviewed the budget, we don't have an unlimited budget as well. So it's a balance act we need to do.
So for this report, are we able to see what would appeals to what age of children? Are we able to do that right now, or it's just general?
We can do that with print materials. We can get it to a very granular, fine level to learn to have that information. But in terms of databases, because when a customer or anyone, when they register to use a database, sometimes it's the account are created on that end. That information is not gathered. So we can do analysis based on our own data that's in our own online system, but we cannot do that for all of the databases. So then the data we gather will not be conclusive in that regard.
So generally speaking, for all the students with cards, what kind of service would be their top choice? Do we know that?
Well, as this one shows, it's the brain fuse definitely comes to the top. Is it this one? Or this one? Yeah. So just make small, but brain fuse, you can see, it's. Yeah, you can see that's only from like 9 months. We get 9,500 already, and that's only 9 months. So you add another quarter, so they easily go over 12,000. So, yeah, and brain fuse is homework help. Yeah. So it's a safe environment and it's a good learning tool.
Provide like gaming content materials for kids? Do we?
Gaming is a topic that has been discussed among technology committee and among our youth services librarians. And then gaming, if you are talking about online gaming, then there are pros and cons, and we have not really, we're not ready to offer that yet. Again, just there are pros and cons, and we looked at the World Health Organization data and then the articles they published about a year ago about the effect of gaming. And then as of, was it yesterday, they said the screen time and how that impacts. So but we do have those little, what do you call that, sphere, those little balls, and play games with those. So that's digital little devices, but then it's not screen time, kind of gaming. So that's where we are.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Well, it sounds like we're doing quite well, and we're providing a service that people, as they realize it's there, are appreciative of it and using it. So it's very good. And we'll just keep tracking the usage, and if we find that we need more of something, I assume there's money in the budget, you can just go out and get it, but if not, you may have to come back and ask for additional funding if you see there's a real need for support in one of these areas, for one of these topics, for example.
Thank you, Bob and the chair. I will keep that in mind.
Okay, let's go on to the next item, which is my meeting with Don yesterday about coordinating with the Community Parks and Recreation Commission. And it was an interesting discussion. We agreed that both the Library Commission and Parks and Recreation have a certain amount of overlap, where both provide similar services to, in many cases, the same group of people. And we agreed that we ought to try to coordinate it and tell each of our, let's say, client groups that the other group and the other programs exist, so that we can interact and get people to be more effective in how they use our staffing and our facilities. And this wasn't something we could work out in just a brief meeting of an hour or two. So the proposal was that we set up a working group with members from each organization and have them get together and talk in detail for several months about how we can coordinate and work together and make sure that the community recognizes what services both of us provide, and where there's interlap or overlap, if we're duplicating services, work out how we can eliminate that and be more efficient in each organization. So apparently the Parks and Recreation Commission has 7 people, so they could have as many as 3 people on a special committee. We could only have 2. So my question is, if we want to have, first of all, should we have this joint committee? Does anybody have any comments on that? And if you agree that we should have a joint committee and work on it, then the next question is, who's going to serve? So first of all, does everyone think it's a good idea for us to work with Parks and Recreation and coordinate the programs and services that we both offer? No comments?
And I think I'm just wondering, like, is the most effective connection between these two, like, the commissions? Or is there, like, in the actual city departments, are there people who are more naturally aligned with, like, overlap of, like, the person in the library who's in, because if our goal is not to actually align our program materials, the activities that we're doing, but instead just cross-promotional, is it finding the person in the library who's in charge of PR communications and the person in the park with PR communications, and kind of them syncing?
Well, my feeling, and I think Don's also, was that if the 2, let's say, appointed groups come up with an issue that they think is important and should be worked on, they can then go to the particular staff person that in each organization that works in that area and ask for help, clarification, meeting with the staffer from the other organization, whatever. But the first step was to get together and say, what programs, what activities do we want to integrate? Do we want to keep separate? Do we want to inform everybody about, just kind of coordinate how the 2 commissions can work together to be more effective? And I'm sure that if you have to talk to one of your individual commission support staff, that's the time you'd point and say, well, we're talking about such and such, and here's the person in the libraries that takes care of such and such. Have them talk to the person in Parks and Recreation that does such and such, and get together, and then they can come back to us and tell us what their recommendations are for working together.
May I add, I think this also had to do with the Aspen report. So the Aspen report was between both departments, and so
Yes.
the hope is that this working group too would be an opportunity for the two commissions to have that working group decide what from that Aspen report could be translated, which has a lot to do with what Bob was talking about around the programs and aligning and.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's not like we've never done any of this before. We have been working with other organizations. It's just that we both thought it'd be better if we formalized it, and that way we could come to the council with whatever recommendations we might have for changing operations, changing staffing, funding, whatever. So, again, do the other commissioners feel that we should be working with Parks and Recreation, and if so, are there a couple of commissioners who'd like to be on the coordinating committee?
I think the joint subcommittee is a good idea, because they will come from different commissions, and they gather together and to brainstorm what's the direction and what we should be doing in the future. And they will report back to their own commission and to get more ideas about the topic they've already discussed about. So I think that would be more efficient. So that's a good idea.
I would say I think the hope too is that we can use this as a way to get more out of the Aspen report. We don't tend to have a ton of time to work on it as a council or commission as a whole, so this would be an opportunity for a smaller group to work on that more.
I agree. I think that the Aspen report had a lot of very valuable items in it, and I think we ought to take the opportunity to move forward and be more coordinated, more effective, especially with other city commissions. So, any other comments?
Yeah, I'll just jump in if I may, because I'm also the liaison to Parks and Rec, so that's convenient. Put on my other hat. One of the things that jumps out at me from the Aspen dialogue report is the part about health. And if I think about how many of the libraries are actually located near a park, you can imagine programming, right, that sort of indoor-outdoor that connects people, flows. So I think there's some things that can be done there. And then, so I did just want to put that in there, and there was one other thing I was going to say just about this. I think we've had a unique opportunity with Monique being Director of College and Henny being in charge of both of them for some period of time. I think there's an opportunity for crossover, and I don't know that it's so much for us to, tell the staff what to do, more to identify areas where, maybe we don't overlap, but we could connect. And I think, that will come naturally if you sit with them and look through their list of things. And if they sit with you, you think about the connections with the schools, right, for example. Parks and Rec, the city runs the athletics middle school program, right? The after-school athletics middle school program. What if, I'm just brainstorming here, but if you sit through enough of these meetings, you think, okay, we're working closely with the school district on the cards. Is there a way to communicate with them? Okay, hey, the summer, middle school athletics, you're going into the middle school athletics program. Maybe the library should be at the middle school athletics program, because I see 5, 6, 7, 8, we don't have a ton of people checking out. Just, that's the kind of thing that I think if you spend a little time with each other and sort of go through even literally agendas, it'll be helpful. I'm also on the city school liaison committee, so it's a lot of liaison. I finally learned how to spell it, yeah. No, you don't want the whole list. So I do think there'd be some value in it, but I think structuring it around the Aspen report, our own personal experiences as people who live here, and then understanding what each of the commissions has covered over the past, year or so will give you, I think, ample opportunity to think of ways to form stronger connections. I'm kind of liking the middle school one.
Okay, the next question is, do we want to have a formal vote to form the committee, or should we just kind of ad hoc have a couple of people who say, yes, I'll do it, and talk to Parks and Recreation and make arrangements to start having the two groups to get together and make their own, let's say, detailed program on how they're going to operate together? What's the comments or thoughts? Or or suggestions for who does what.
I think maybe whoever would like to volunteer to be a part of this committee could indicate that interest and propose how they want it to be organized.
Definitely Doug, right? We'll volunteer Doug, since he's not here.
Sheena seemed very interested, was part of the Aspen dialogue, so we have two.
Okay, so the two of you would be
Not
willing.
me, no, Doug.
You wouldn't be willing to
He
be?
wasn't here, but he sent a message that he wanted this.
Well, I don't know.
I think that, since we proposed the idea of joint subcommittee, so everyone can think about to volunteer to work with other commissions regarding the collaboration between the two commissions or the two departments. I think the first step is, yes, we will have a joint subcommittee, and next is to have the members join in. How's that? So because right now probably still takes some time to think about it, schedule, because when there's a joint subcommittee and they have to meet together and the schedule time and lots of things, so maybe needs time to think about, right?
Okay, well,
But Doug would be,
okay, well, I'm going to assume that we do think it's a good idea to have a joint subcommittee, and we have one volunteer. And maybe we get another one later. So, moving on, the next item is a joint meeting with the city council. Commissions normally have an annual meeting with the city council. Some commissions meet quite regularly every year, and some commissions kind of 1 year on, 1 year off. We haven't met for a while. So I think it's time we had our joint meeting with the council, and it's really up to, I guess, the city manager more than anybody else to schedule it, because the city manager puts budgets, puts the agendas together. But let me ask Allison, do you think we should be meeting with the council?
So there are often benefits from having the study sessions are, letting the council get up to speed on accomplishments. It's an opportunity for staff to share information like you heard earlier this evening about the robot and, some of the shiny, cool new stuff that we're doing. So I think there's usually some value in that. The other area is traditionally like if there's, major decisions to be made, and, honestly, there don't and haven't been for some time, thankfully, major decisions to be made, not like when the commission was formed, when, its role was to help the city figure out how are we going to deliver these services, and then, how we're going to get through the program. So, certainly some value in an update, but I think it's, important to know what is the objective that you guys would like to have. And certainly, helpful for everyone to understand how our libraries are working and how they're being used. I just don't want anybody to take them for granted. So, there's definitely some value in that. I don't know if there are any, I don't get the sense there are any major decisions that you all will be recommending to us or that we'll need to make separate, of course, from the budget. So if I were you, I'd focus it on accomplishments and really next steps. My thoughts.
I think that accomplishments and issues, if there are any, are certainly worth bringing forward. And things like the robot, yes, this has been very popular, it's very effective, and gee, we might want to come back to the council for some funding for additional robots. We may be able to get the robot manufacturers to give us a discount, but then we still have to put some money in. but gee, this is something that the patrons like and the younger children particularly like, so we think it's worth seriously consideration, that sort of thing. I think that, and also talking about what the library has been providing in the last year or two. One of the things that came up several years ago was that ebooks were going to eliminate the need for libraries and eliminate the need for paper. And the American Library Association did a nationwide study, and they found out that nationally, not just in Palo Alto, but in Palo Alto, this is also true, that ebooks have gotten up to about 25% of the total checkouts and just held there. And it's in the 25 plus or minus a couple percent range everywhere in the country. So, yeah, people like ebooks, but they still want to come into the library and get paper. So, 5 years ago, the prediction was that paper was going away and you wouldn't need physical libraries, and that's not true. Any other comments?
I think it just makes sense, so maybe we can have a discussion at a later time of like, hey, what those highlights would be that I can share, but maybe just be really strategic about the meeting and not just
Yeah.
last minute put together.
Actually, proactively discussing electronic and digital resources is an obvious place because, I think that's one thing that's changed, and you can certainly describe it as a return on investment, right? And it's not just to the city council, it's the community. The community's invested proactively in our new and improved libraries. So maybe that's one way to think about it. We'll give you a status report on your investment and how it's being utilized, so.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and the fact that we're maintaining circulation and visits to libraries, and we've been doing this over a period of years, and also that when they do the annual citizen survey, what are people concerned about? The first three subjects that people are worried about, they're the first three provisions of community services are fire, police, and libraries. So, and this has been true for years, that the libraries are right after public safety. So people do appreciate the libraries, and they obviously feel that we're doing a reasonable job, or they'd be complaining. I haven't seen an awful lot of complaints on the citizen survey about library performance. So I think it's useful to go to the city council and say, well, this is what we've been doing. These are some of the things we've provided that aren't standard library, but are very well received in the community. And we think we should be doing more of what the people want and how they want it, so we can service the community. See what the questions are from the council and what the reactions are from the public. I think it's worth doing. So, on that basis, who would try to coordinate or schedule the meeting? Should it be us, or should it be?
I will take that. So Josh, who normally helps with these meetings, he would communicate with the city manager's office, and then they would pick a date. You guys can let us know now, a month perhaps, that you might be interested in doing it, so we can get started on the dates, if that would be helpful.
Yeah,
But that's up to you guys to decide if you would feel you're at a place to give us a month to look into, or if you'd rather wait until after you decide an agenda.
Yeah, if you have Josh work with the city manager, and I'd be surprised if we could get something arranged in less than a month. So it's not going to happen. So, but we don't, there's no schedule for doing this. It's just do it this year. So I think we should be starting to move forward to have the joint meeting with the council and get the, let's start working through the system and get Josh talking to the city manager and see what we can schedule and when. So I think that's a good idea. Well, Monique isn't here, so do we have a library director? You're gonna do it for Monique?
I'm sitting in for Gayatri to, the report, do you have any questions in the report that we, the monthly report that we put in the packet? That captures all the highlights that, has happened in the library. And, one addition is we hired a new teen librarian. She came from Massachusetts to us. And now she works at Mitchell Park Library. And then, I don't know if you've noticed the, short story dispenser that was at the city hall here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so now it's at Green Middle School, and it's very popular. And all the school librarians, the rest of the school librarians heard about this at their meeting, and then now they're like, "Why are you so special? We want to we want to line up and then be the next." So the plan is the short story dispenser will be in the community somewhere during summer, and then when the school starts, it will go its tour throughout the school system, all the schools. And then Green Meadow, the librarian there is very pleased with how students have been using it. And she has created programs around that. And so she actually emailed us and then saying, having the short story dispenser at our middle school library has been great. Students who have never before read a short story are excited to come in and get a story to read. Some students have been coming every day, and we have at least one who is attempting to read every single story included in the device collection. So it's very encouraging.
Very good.
Yes. And then she create themes around the stories. Like when you read a story, you align with that concept, and you tape it on the board. So it's a very very much welcomed in the schools. And then as the robot for the technology, say how popular our robot is, the program Ryan mentioned they did a presentation at Computers in Libraries. That's it's an international conference on robotics, on technology, actually. But then our staff did a presentation about AR, and that generated a lot of tweets and how Palo Alto would say, "Come and listen, Palo Alto is at the cutting edge," or "Come, look at how cool Palo Alto is using their robot." And then, so Bob, you just mentioned, oh, if we need another robot, actually we do, because our little Dewey is version 5, and then now they have come up with a version 6, and that allows more APIs to be created. And our staff working with Ryan, they are capable of using the upgraded version, but in terms of programming, but now we do not have the hardware to do that. So, and then different companies have approached us to want to work with us to develop APIs specifically for library to use. So because they're not, the robots, the programs, they are not for, they are for daily interactions, and then that's the kind of AI, but then they are lack of the AI that's applicable just for libraries. For example, can you search the catalog? can you tell me if you have a book in Russian? Or can you tell me I have a book overdue? That kind of interaction, that's not happening yet because there is no program or APIs developed just for library market. And then yet our staff has been able to make progress in that regard. And they use Raspberry Pi and Python, but to develop the software. But we need a real upgraded robot to actually test it out. So that's where we are. Also, we recently digitized Paha's book to celebrate 125th anniversary. So we made the Paha's Palo Alto a centennial history, that book. We made it available online.
It sounds like we're providing an awful lot that the community wants and appreciates, and I don't think the general public realizes all the things that are available and how well they've been received. So I think we ought to, at the very least, try to get out more information to the community. But I think what we're doing has been very successful in general. I haven't heard any complaints from anybody about the library services, and I don't know anybody else have any. But I think we're doing very well, and I think we need to keep on doing it. I think it's very good. Okay. Council liaison.
I don't really have anything in particular to report. We had a nice conversation about pensions already, so that's fine. And like I mentioned, I'm also the liaison to Parks and Rec, but nothing other than that that's important at the moment.
Okay. Any commissioner comments, reports, questions, issues? Nothing?
Yes, I do have an announcement to make. My term will end on May 31st. So tonight is my last LAC meeting. For the past 6 years, I've been honored to serve the community as a Library Advisory Commissioner. And it has been my privilege to work with every commissioner, incumbent and former, and liaison from City Council and the library staff, of course. So I really cherish the time when we're working together for Metro Park's reconstructions, reopening, Recanada's renovation, reopening, and so many other projects that we devoted our time and efforts together. I feel proud that Palo Alto City Library has been highly recognized among libraries nationwide and has been greatly appreciated by Palo Alto community. But there are still a lot of things for the libraries to do. And I believe that LAC and Palo Alto City Library would definitely do a wonderful job. Thank you all so much, and take care. Yeah, we have a lot of things to do, right?
Right. Yeah, thank you, Sheena. I'm sorry that you're leaving because we're going to certainly miss your capabilities and your dedication and hard work. But thanks. We really like what you've been providing for us, and we really appreciate all you've done for the Library Commission and the community. It's been wonderful to have you here, and we're going to miss you.
Thank you, me too. Miss you all.
Okay. Anything else?
So I just want to say the next item, the CPLA, the spring workshop.
Yes.
Library has budget for it.
It does.
Right.
Okay.
So anyone who is interested in attending the workshop, yeah.
Okay.
And then the let Josh know, right, let Josh know if you're interested. And then the proclamation right now is displayed at Mitchell Park. and it will travel through the city libraries. So, and then Bob, you attended the ceremony. Just, do you want to say anything on that?
Yeah, what day is that again?
It was April 1st, the
The
proclamation.
21st?
The proclamation was on April 1st, and
Okay.
it was not an April Fool's joke.
Okay. Okay, and,
Well, it was my pleasure to read it. It was the first and only one I've gotten to read so far for proclamations. And I was going to ask, but they'd already decided that I could read it. So I was pretty excited about that.
yeah, I was gonna say, I remember the proclamation, but I don't remember what day it was. Yeah, it was, well received, let's say, put it that way. Okay, and, yeah, I'll just mention that my term also ends in, next month, and I did reapply, but I don't know whether I'll be selected by the council or not. So this may be my last meeting, and if it is, I'll certainly miss all of you, and I appreciate all the time and effort we've all put in. And I think it's been wonderful to be able to provide some service and some benefits to the community for an organization and a service that's so well thought of and well appreciated and well used. So this may also be goodbye like Sheena, but we'll see. Agenda for the next meeting, which will be in June. Any thoughts?
I think maybe hearing what some of your highlights on like digital, what we should share with the city council.
Yeah,
Would love to hear what you think would be the best things to share.
And Ryan promised to bring Dewey.
Too bad.
Yeah.
We will. We can bring it, him, her over.
okay, one of the things that I think might be considered is robotics. And to what extent do we want to expand the robot program? And what kind of reaction are we getting from the businesses around here that could help support it? You'll have an opportunity, the next month or two to get more feedback from the local businesses. And I think it's proven to be very supported and very useful. So we got to look at what we can do to expand it. And I also think that it's a good way of the local technology companies getting really good publicity. So I think it's something that we ought to be working with, and I'd like to see that move forward. So that's another topic we could have for next meeting. Okay, anything else? Nothing you can think of? Okay, somebody want to move to adjourn? I'll move to adjourn.
It feels like you and Sheena should do that.
And I second.
All in favor?
Aye.